In this video, I'll show you how to build your own 4-foot by 7-foot ping pong table. I'll take you through all the steps I did, and I'm assuming that you are not going to build a 4.5 by 8 or a 5 by 9. Those are bigger projects. Raw materials are actually quite a lot more money, and they're much more involved because of the fact that sheet goods come in 4 by 8. So don't build a 4 by 8 foot table, build a 4 by 7, and I'll show you how to do that. I'll take you through the building the legs, the top, the finishing, and then the net and the paddles and so forth. So I want to talk about making the legs. These two monolithic middle legs are laid up from plywood that I found in my garage. I found 48-inch long cedar shelves that are 1/8 and 1 inch wide that were perfect. And you can use whatever plywood you have. It doesn't really matter the quality too much. You want to make them 5 inches wide. These are 4.5 inches wide, and mine are 43-inch across because the table is going to be 48, so somewhere in there in the low 40s. So first I took all the shelving and cut it into 2-inch strips like this, and then from there I made 8 cross members like this that had the laps, and you can see this is an outtake. This is a mistake here, and that's okay. This is I had enough left over. So here are my half laps. And if I were doing it again, I'd use a real half lap. What's a real half lap? You take exactly half of this distance and you split it. So you go half in one direction and half in the other direction. And I didn't do that. I did 1/2 inch here, and that's about 3/4 inch out of the pine here. I'll show you in a minute. But I would just take whatever this distance is and split it and cut your half laps. Now for the other sides, for the legs, a proper height for a ping pong table is 30 inches. So take off 1 inch for the top, and that's 29 inches to this place right here. This is 2 inches, so what I did was I staggered them so that some of them had 29 inches and then had dowels attached, and then others had just 27 inch and they were supporting. So you can see here that I'm alternating each other one. After I glued these up, I took some more walnut plywood and I made the wraps. And you can see what I've done here. This is 1/4 inch walnut plywood that I mitered here on the corners. And that came out looking real nice. And then I got lazy and just banged out the interior ones. Just, faced it and glued it and then I just stained the edges. And that comes out looking pretty good. For the quality of table I'm building, this has worked out really, really well. Here you can see my construction technique. And you don't need to use walnut. I think a maple plywood with the dark stain is going to work out really well and save money. So I actually recommend doing this in maple plywood. These are 7 feet. A little bit less than 7 feet long. Because the table is 7 feet, this is 6.5 feet long here. So I've got 3 inches on either side. That's about right. So I've cut them down from 8 foot. And this is pine from Home Depot. This is really square dimensional pine lumber that comes out really nice and solid. It's all been kiln dried and it's really straight. When you're picking your lumber, make sure and get straight pieces. And if there's a little bit of a bow, then you want to put the high point in the middle and then lap the bottoms of that, right? And then the laps came out a little deep because I didn't put a deep enough lap in here. Because I just didn't want to take that much material out of here. But I would do it, if I were doing it again, I would just half lap it. This is plenty strong though. This is 1 1/8" material. It's light. This weighs 8 pounds and it's 7 feet. It's 6.5 feet tall, so it's very manageable. I've built this so these don't care how they connect. You can put any of these laps into any of these corners. They're all tested and adjusted to work together and fit together, and that helps with assembly. So these were pretty easy to make. I had to use the router to make this part of the lap here, and I used a table saw dado blade to use to make this. Now I want to talk about the tops. The tops are made of particle board. I've drilled out the particle board to save weight. Each of the top halves is 46 pounds, which is movable by one person, and 2 kids can lift them and move them around. I think it makes sense to get some of the weight out. It doesn't change the rigidity. I really think particle board is a better product than MDF for a ping pong table that you're going to move. If you're building a ping pong table that's just going to stay in one place forever, then MDF is probably better. Then I have the 1/4 inch tops here, and these are 2 by 4 foot panels of walnut, and you don't need walnut, so you can get this whole thing out of a single sheet of maple 1/4 inch plywood that isn't going to cost very much. If you have a pickup truck and a track saw, then 1/4 inch maple plywood is going to reduce your cost of materials quite a bit. The hardest part about this was the inlay, which did not come out perfect, but the table plays fine, but this is by far the hardest. If you have experience inlaying and you want to do the inlay, great, you'll figure it out. If you don't have experience, you can just mask this off and paint it, spray it with a white paint, and then finish the whole thing, and you'll have a better result because it'll be perfectly flat. So it'll be cheaper and easier, and I really recommend that unless you're crazy about inlaying, which I am. This is all natural maple. These sides were put on using tongue and groove, so I used the 1/4 inch flat top blade on my saw to make the groove in the sides, and then
Yep.
turn it on.
Yep.
Go all the way out to engage and hold this side piece like that. So it's almost functioning like a dowel, like that. And then the other corners will be mitered, but this will be straight like that. Okay, let's drop it. Let's get it going like that, and then we will put some more in the corner. So this is going to come out about that much. Look out, look out, look out, look out, look out, look out. Straight down, okay. Okay. That's all good. It looks okay. Now I'm going to squeeze it down here. And then I just used a 1 inch by 1/4 inch floating tenon inside that I just glued in, and that gave me the chance to really control the glue up and get a nice flat top. So there's really no finish on these. This is just raw wood, and it came out super nice and flat. I've got a 1/4 inch panel here after cutting them down, because if you remember, if you saw my video, I first made a 4x8 table and that didn't play very well, so I cut 6 inches off, and then I just added this 1/4 inch strip of maple, and that came out great. The way I got the color here is this General Finishes water-based stain. I don't know why people use oil-based stains. I had some and I gave it away. I put it in the garage and put a sign on it that said, "Free, take me." Water-based stain is your friend. It gets the job done. It's phenomenal. The General Finishes products are great, and it's just super flexible. If you ever need to make any changes or add it to the polyurethane, it's really easy to work with, and it really coats. It really gets sucked up into any wood. Maple is just no problem. You don't have to do much prep. This does the work. And then I wiped on Varathane water-based polyurethane, and this is about 6 coats. And it works out so well. You keep it nice and thin. You just use like a t-shirt material and just wipe it on, and then a 220 grit sandpaper between coats, or even that 3M gray Scotch-Brite pad between coats is fine. A ping pong table is not a museum piece. It's meant to be used, and if it doesn't look perfect, that's fine. I did some extra sanding here to just work on some of these little waves. And it's fine, you don't have to worry too much about how it looks. But just because I've done a bunch of sanding, I'm going to mix a little bit of polyurethane and the stain together and do a very thin coat to try to darken it up. And then again, it really helps to understand ping pong to make a good table finish. And I finished with a 220 grit, just all vertical. And that gives just a little bit of grab to the table for the ball when it's spinning. And I think a 220 grit finish on the water-based polyurethane is perfect for many years of high quality ping pong play. Notice also that I'm using an 1/8 and an 1/8 apron all the way around, you see, and then here on these 2 corners, I've rounded it with the sanding block. Of course, this corner is for playing, and this has to be square, so it's uncomfortable to grab. But these two corners are rounded and they're easy. And why is it an inch and an eighth? Because when you're holding it, or when you're two people, lifting, then that just gives you a little bit of room, a little purchase for your fingers to grab, and then you can go either way. And if you didn't have that, you could, pulling would be a little harder. There you go. It's easier with two people, but it's really easy to set this table up with one person. Now, it's possible that the table will sag a little bit and you'll have a ball rolling downhill to the net. In that case, it's easy to just put a little cardboard or masonite, whatever you want, right here in the middle, and that'll just level it up. That's no problem. For the purposes of ping pong, small mistakes don't really matter much. You might have gouges, this might not be perfectly flush. You're really not going to have any problems playing ping pong with it. Okay, it might not be tournament quality, but as long as it's pretty close, you really don't have to sweat the flatness here. I have a little bit of a ripple here in the sanding. I'm not sure why I've tried to sand this flat, but it just doesn't matter for play. What matters is you just don't want it to bow or cup or sag, and this whole structure really stays flat and is quite rigid. Now for the net, you've probably seen these things. These are junk. These are toys. This is not going to make a good playing experience. You want a real net. This is a Stiga net that has a very strong clamp on it. And this clamp is just over 1 inch wide. I think it's 1 1/4. And so I have taken my saw, my flush cut saw, and I've reduced from 1 1/8, which is good for gripping like this, and it's comfortable because I've rounded the edges here. But I've used my flush cut saw to take this piece of maple down to 1 inch, because this clamp, which is very strong, isn't going to go to 1 1/8. This is designed for 1 inch, and that's as much as you get. So this is going to go, like that. So you really need to use the flush cut if you're going to add this 1/8 inch extension to the apron, which I like. I like it a lot. It's great for, it helps make it more maneuverable. So I want to show you how easy it is for one person to put this together. Line it up, and then I just have to lift it a little bit here. Watch my fingers, and it drops in. All right, the net is a normal net for a 60-inch table. For a 60-inch wide, a 5-foot wide table, you can't get a net for a 4 or 4.5 foot wide table. They don't make them. So you have to modify one. This I'm clamping right in the center. So I'm clamping both halves of the table right in the middle, and we're right up to the edge of the jaw. Then here, this tensioner I set on this end. Now on this side of the net, you see it's too long. It's going to be too long because it's for a 60-inch table. And by the way, they extend out 6 inches past the table for angle shots. So this net is 6 feet wide, right? And I need to get it down to 5 feet wide, so I have 6 inches on each side. And what I've done is I've just done some sewing here. First thing I did was I had to cut it and relace this tensioning cord so it's not going through here. The tensioning cord is just going straight through here now. And then I sewed it a little bit in here with some black thread. And I used polyester for this because polyester doesn't break and doesn't stretch. Okay, so, and it's got to be pretty tight. So I will clamp it in place. And the clamps are nice and tight. Okay, and then this goes up and down in, and then these tensioners. So I've hooked the other side, and now I'm going to take this tensioner, and they really have to be pretty tight. You need a very straight, strong line across the top. So you really pull this and try to get it down onto this lower ring like that, and that kind of catches in. And now I have, as you can see, I have a straight net, and I have room, I have storage for balls. And I also haven't destroyed the net, so if I ever want to use this net for a larger table, all I have to do is undo the stitching and put it back together. It's pretty easy. So it's okay, I think, to invest in a good net because it's non-destructive. You can always take it back to the size it was before. And it's nice to have this storage here. In fact, it's actually fairly clever because they go in the top and then you can pull them out the bottom. Pretty nice, huh? You can see that the net really comes out great. It's got good tension, it's at the right height. It's an incredibly playable table. As far as the weights go, each panel is 46 pounds. I probably took 4 pounds out of each panel by drilling. And then the legs are 18 pounds each, and the stringers are 8 pounds each. So the whole thing weighs about 145 pounds. It fits in a very small footprint. You can store it easily. It's easy to move around. It's rugged. It's all polyurethane. You can have dinner on it. You know, it's polyurethane. You can have spills on it, and it'll just wipe right up. The solid maple skirt should keep it, you know, from really getting injured over the years. This will last for decades, and I think you'll get lots of enjoyable ping pong play out of it. Don't forget the 220 grit at the end, and ask me any questions. I'm not putting up a build video of this because people don't watch my build videos, but I'm happy to help. If you discover better designs or anything interesting, please link to your video in the comments. Thank you for watching, for hitting the like button, and subscribing to my channel.